Hello and welcome to week 4 of my short talk series on gender, sexual and relationship diversity for adult learners. This week I'm talking about relationship diversity and it's the last of the themed sessions. Next week I'll be picking up any questions that you've emailed to me about anything covered in this October series. So far I've received some excellent questions on non-binary gender identities, which I'll be sure to cover next week. So do keep the questions coming to jennigatestherapy@gmail.com, as that's really helpful for me to make sure I include or clarify anything that I've missed out. So relationship diversity. Now, if you've watched the previous 3 talks, you'll not only see that there's lots of crossover within the GSRD subject matter, but by now you'll also be clear of recurring themes which help provide us with some trusty principles in navigating this subject. Let's have some slides. Firstly, relationship diversity is not exclusively an LGBTQI+ matter. It affects each and every one of us. So again, I'll be asking you to view relationships from your own unique perspectives. Number 2, heteronormativity, or societally perceived norms and idealised relationship hierarchies create unhelpful pressures and false ideas of what a healthy or successful relationship looks like. Thirdly, we have lots of relationship labels that alone do not tell us of the way somebody currently, in the past or in the future, might engage in relationships. We can make no assumptions. And finally, communication is absolutely key in having a successful relationship, of which there are many, many ways of doing and different shapes and forms, which will also change for each individual over time. As human beings, we have many different types of relationships, and today I'm largely talking about the types of relationships we have with romantic or sexual partners. That is, those that we might date or partner or enter into any kind of consensual relationship with. This might sound a bit of a vague definition, but the reason for that is that it would be very easy for me to fall into the trap of defining relationships by societal ideals, rather than representing truth and reality and in representing all kinds of relationships. Our current reality in the UK is this. 1/3 of adults live alone, not in a partnership. Between 1/4 and 1/2 of relationships which people agree to be monogamous are actually secretly non-monogamous, and around 5% openly non-monogamous. Around 1/2 of marriages end in divorce. Many people have sexual relationships and encounters outside of relationships. And many people do not experience romantic attraction and or prioritise platonic or other relationships in their lives. So that's our reality and the real norms. To help us grasp the idea of a societal relationship hierarchy, I'm going to try and deconstruct the Western cultural and social hierarchical structure that has us all assume that the holy grail of relationships is finding and being with the one and fulfilling all our relational, romantic and sexual desires exclusively and forever in partnership with this soulmate, lover and life partner in a radically monogamous marriage, with that relationship being seen as being of the utmost importance and upheld as the superior to all other types of relationships. So it can be useful to consider relationship anarchy. The concept of relationship anarchy can help us see that our societal ideal is an unrealistic goal. Even if this type of radical monogamy in marriage suits us, it's likely we still have other important relationships throughout our adult lives. These can include family members, faith, relationship with God or gods, our children, friends, pets, colleagues, nature, and so on. Our many relationships outside of our romantic or sexual relationship will undoubtedly impact on our intimate relations, even in the sense of how we divide our time, focus, and attention. Trying to live up to this cultural ideal is not without challenges, and most of us will attempt to do it at some stage of our lives. This same hierarchy teaches children to have best friends, almost as a precursor or preparation for the seemingly more important relationship that they will enter into as adults with their future spouse. How many people remember being ditched by friends for a love interest, or maybe still are being? My son's birthday's on Valentine's Day, and many adults that share his birthday have told me it's rotten as you get older, as nobody wants to go celebrating out on your actual birthday, as they're all keen to go on a date. So consumerism and relationship hierarchies, or true love, you decide. But it speaks volumes to me about conventions that we follow and value over real relational connections with others. And love is another matter, perhaps for another series of talks. It's interesting when we think of language and how exclusive it is in keeping this relationship hierarchy going. For example, how many people have a family member who they've heard being described as never having married or has no family? Being described by negation doesn't do much for one's self-esteem and fails to notice what is important for the individual. When you stop and consider the subtle messages all around us, we can see the hierarchy emerge that discredits many cultures or ways of being outside of the heteronormative, as well as creating unobtainable expectations for those that buy into this as a way of being. These hierarchical ideas exist in both monogamous and non-monogamous relationships, and I use these umbrella terms in which we can see that there are many different types of being in relationship. Some academics like to see it as a spectrum of different degrees of monogamy and non-monogamy, but for me, I understand relationship diversity better when I see there are unlimited possibilities, and I can then consider how we can work with this in order that we can all explore our relational needs at any given time, and more importantly, communicate our thoughts, feelings, boundaries and questions with potential partners. Brooke tells us that in the UK, about 5% of relationships are openly non-monogamous or polyamorous. Here are some definitions of some of the types of openly non-monogamy taken from the Brooke website. The more commonly known forms of non-monogamy are secret non-monogamy, also known as infidelity or cheating sometimes, which this YouGov survey tells us 1 in 5 British adults said they'd done, and almost a third of British adults said they had thought about having an affair. But perhaps an even more common form of non-monogamy is non-exclusive dating, hookups, or having friends with benefits. And again, if we consider the relationship hierarchy, it's often seen as a superior relationship when one moves on or progresses, observing my language there, towards an exclusive relationship of two people in a couple who are monogamous. So we can see mono or non-mono aren't binary concepts in nature, and there are a number of possibilities and how one may or may not identify. When we consider just how many of the British population actually fall under the non-monogamous umbrella, it's a very significant proportion, and to ignore that's failing to represent something that's present within UK relationship culture. As a counselling therapist, I would question how psychologically safe it is that this is a largely unspoken about topic. Non-communication in any relationship is likely to lead to misunderstanding and hurt. But not just that, we're living in a system whereby a majority of people are experiencing minority stress and shame because few adults today have ever received all-inclusive relationship and sex education. So society is not reflecting relationship diversity in a meaningful or truly representative way. Now, at this point, I want to be very clear that I'm neither promoting nor bashing mono or non-mono ways of being in relationship. But as with gender, sexuality, or any other part of our identity, it is unhelpful when there is a societal idea and ideal and pressure to conform to any one way of being. As we all know, one size does not fit all. There are many legitimate reasons why somebody might choose that a particular way of being in relationship is the right thing for them. And that will undoubtedly be influenced by our own belief systems, cultures, religions, families of origin, and communities. If, and this is unique to the individual, it is psychologically safe, consensual, and communication remains throughout the duration of the relationship, then great. The danger comes when we take any one way of being in relationship as more normative or morally righteous and hold that up as a superior or better way of being than any other. It might be that it's the right way for you, but it doesn't mean it's right for everybody else. And I'd like to add in here that we need to be very mindful too that many people have strong faiths and religious or cultural views that might influence the style of their relationships. Nobody should be shamed for their belief system, be that arranged marriage, abstinence from sex, or anything else that's important to them. Let's now have a look at some of the different types of monogamous relationship. We have two main categories, radical and reflexive monogamy. And within those terms, which are rather self-explanatory in a general sense, it's useful to explore the themes of sexual, social, emotional, and structural relationships. I might identify as a bisexual woman and be interested in dating a lesbian woman who I've met on a dating site. In the first instance, I've messaged to ask her relationship status and what she's looking for, saying that I'm looking for a relationship with somebody I feel emotionally and sexually compatible with. Now, if I'm not more explicit in the information I give and ask for, I might make the assumption of my potential date wishing the same type of relationship as I do. So let's work through the four categories. Sexually, have I considered how I might fulfill the part of my sex life that I can't assume to expect from a lesbian identifying woman? What do we mean by sex? If we're monogamous, is it okay for me to watch porn on my own? Or are there certain sexual behaviours that are off limits? Socially, we haven't communicated anything about our other relationships in our lives and the other people or things that are important to us. My potential partner is a Christian, so what does that mean for her beliefs and behaviours? Can I still be friends with my ex? What about my commitments to my elderly parents? And how much do we tell others about our GSRD identities? Emotionally, what does love mean to us? And what are our emotional needs in a relationship? What does emotional intimacy mean? And where are our boundaries around privacy? Are there certain things that may trigger emotional responses based on previous experiences? What are our boundaries around this? And finally, structurally, how will our relationship work? How will we spend our time? How often shall we see each other? What are our future hopes? Maybe cohabiting. Is it an online or long distance relationship? And how ready are we for commitment, if at all? So you can see that by exploring these categories, we can really get so much more useful information and meaningful information. Before forming any new romantic or sexual relationships, I so encourage that all of us think all of this through. Then, in forming relationships, discuss this with our potential partners. And in maintaining relationships, regularly check in with yourself and your partner or partners. Is it still working? Does anything need to change? There are so many factors that impact on our relationships, and so we must adapt, learn, evolve as best we can, and not feel trapped or restricted by perceived societal norms that might hold us in an unhealthy relational position. If we can make informed and psychologically safe choices at any given time throughout our lives about how we choose or choose not to engage in relationships of any kind, then we're winning. Success should not be measured on a type of relationship or based on unrealistic societal ideals that don't reflect who we are or who we want to be in relationship with or not. If we can take this view, we can look back in past relationships of all kinds and celebrate our unique experience in those snapshots of time and embrace the world for the richness and diversity that we experience on our own unique journeys, whilst respecting the paths taken by others. Thank you again for joining me in week 4. I'll be back next week to answer any questions I receive in this series of short talks on gender, sexual and relationship diversity. Thank you.